Hello and welcome, folks, to today's webinar. Happy Friday. We are almost at Mice Down Drinks Up time. Congratulations on making it this far throughout the course of the week. I'm very excited. I'm here with Jonathan Mallard, who from our Benzinga Pro onboarding team. And today we are going to show you how to use Benzinga Pro to your advantage during these volatile times. So Jonathan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Ryan. I am also happy it's Friday. It's been a long week, but it's always a pleasure to join you for these webinars.
Well, thank you very much. I really enjoy it myself. It has been a long week. It's been a long month. It feels like it's been longer than that with everything that's going on, but that's okay. We're here to celebrate, and we're here to use Pro to show people how they can actually profit using it. So, the first thing that I wanted to start off with here is I wanted to delve into a little bit of a commonly known trading style. And I want to show users how they can use Pro in this particular trading style. Today, we're going to be discussing momentum stocks and how you can actually trade those stocks and how we can use Pro to help you find things to trade, more than just the example that we have today. And momentum is fun. It can, the couple of caveats here. Number one, momentum can be incredibly profitable, and that's what brings a lot of people to it. You can get in kind of like a short swing type time frame, and you can actually do quite well. Momentum can also go against you, as with anything in the market. So it's important to stick to your trading plan. If you don't have a trading plan, that's going to be step one before looking to buy momentum stocks. Come up with a trading plan. Come up with something that allows you to protect your capital and allows you to suppress your emotions while you're in a trade, because there's nothing worse than not being able to sleep, worried that you sized too much or worried that this trade is going against you. You want to make this as mechanical as possible so that you can be as consistent as possible. That's how you accumulate gains in the market. Hitting singles is going to be much better than hitting home runs. The good thing about momentum trades is you can be aiming for a single and have that turn into a home run. So that's one of the reasons why they're so sought after. So one of the things that I was thinking of doing here is first using the movers tool. And the reason that I want to use the movers tool, first of all, this is one of my favorite tools in the entire platform. Jonathan, I believe you're a big fan of the movers yourself as well.
Absolutely. It's really how I first learned how to trade off of the news.
Awesome. And when you talk to customers, do they like using the movers a lot? Do you show how to use movers? Is it commonly asked about?
Absolutely. I mean, everybody's looking for those pre-market gappers or
Right,
what's,
right.
gapping for the day. And it's just so quick and simple to find those gainers and
Right.
losers.
And that's exactly how I feel about it too. One of the reasons why I have plenty of scanners in my broker and all of that, but the mover scanner differentiates itself because it's so easy to use. A couple of clicks and I can find what I'm looking for. So Jonathan, you mentioned gappers. That's definitely one of the first things that I do every day is I scan the pre-market to see what is gapping up. Obviously you have other market cap and price filters that you can use if you want. I have some here. I'm trying to find some larger market cap stocks for the sake of liquidity. And that's something else that we're going to talk about with momentum. When you're trading momentum, because these things can turn on a dime, it's very important that you understand what it is that you're trading. In particular, the share structure, in particular, the float. You don't necessarily want to get trapped in something that you can't get out of. And that problem is compounded if you decide to use options. So one of the things that I'm looking for here in this particular example is I want to look for things with a little bit higher market cap and a higher price so that I can ensure I can get in and out of my trade and not get caught on one side or the other. So you had mentioned the gappers. We normally scan the pre-market for that, but what we're going to do today is we're actually going to look for some momentum names. So we're going to scan the regular session. And remember, when we're looking for momentum, this is not necessarily just going to be an intraday day trade. This could be a swing trade. This could be a couple of days, maybe even just as short as 2 days, as long as a week, or perhaps even longer. So one of the things that we're going to start off by doing is we're going to define the range of stocks that we're looking for in movers. So again, you can do this you can adjust your period with any of the presets. But one of the things that I'm looking for is 2 weeks. And you can see the only preset we have is for 1 week and for 1 month. And sure, we can use these. that wouldn't be bad, and especially for momentum. I guess 1 week would really not be bad. We're at Friday here, so I kind of want to go back over 2 weeks. That's not one of the options, so we're going to go ahead and use custom. And when you click on custom, you can then click on the date selector beneath it, and now you can define your own range. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the Monday, the April 13th, up until today. And what we have here now is, and make sure that you set your sliders here for your market cap and your price in accordance with what it is that you're looking for. In this particular case, we are looking for just higher cap stocks here. So when you're actually scanning the results here, and let me sort that differently. All right, when you're actually going through these results here, you can find different stocks that are moving. What's so great about movers is it will tell you how much that particular stock is moving. So you can actually look for things that fit your trading plan and fit your trading style. Everyone's a little bit different. Some people don't like trading stocks with a high price. Some people don't like trading stocks with a low price. It's completely up to you. And so one of the things that you can do is you can actually use movers to find what meets your criteria. Now, I've gone ahead and done this here. You can see there are some names in here that you might recognize, like Beyond Meat, Hess, Wayfair. When we were preparing for this, one of the stocks that I discovered that I want to use is Zoom. And the reason that I want to use Zoom is because it happens to be prevalent right now with all of the headlines. A lot of people are working from home with the pandemic that's going on, web conferencing. I don't know if you watched the draft last night, Jonathan. They used Zoom to meet with all of the players and all of that. So Zoom seems to have a lot of eyeballs on it. Seems to be really popular right now. So it seems like that would be a good catalyst for a momentum trade. And that actually segues into one of the other things that I was talking about. Or that one of the other things that I wanted to mention when it comes to, sorry, I entered the wrong ticker there. One of the other things that I wanted to mention when it comes to momentum trades. The thing about momentum here is, and sorry, let me clear off some of these indicators. I was doing something else. One of the things about momentum is that for momentum, there has to be some type of catalyst. And that's what Pro is going to help you find. That catalyst could be a breaking news article. In the case of Zoom, it could be the coronavirus pandemic that we were just discussing, forcing people to use this. There has to be a catalyst behind it. And I would caution newer traders, we're going to show you some indicators that you can use on your chart. I want to do this with the caution that there has to be an underlying catalyst. In order for these indicators to actually calculate, this is all based on different math equations, and I don't have them all memorized. You don't have to memorize them. That's not part of it. But what you have to understand is that a lot of these are actually based off the price. So the momentum might not actually be a leading indicator because it actually needs the price in order to do that calculation. So you want to be very careful about saying, well, I see, like for example, right here, this is the momentum study in TradingView, which I'll show you shortly here. I see this big spike and it corresponds to a big candle here. Well, you want to be careful about that. We're going to discuss a little bit more in depth what you want to look for. Remember, there has to be a catalyst that's driving the stock in one direction or another. So let me go ahead and clear this off and I will show you. We got a basic daily chart on Zoom here. Benzinga Pro is telling us why it's moving today. Zoom communication shares are trading higher after it was announced the company will be added to the NASDAQ 100 beginning April 30th. So pretty cool. I actually remember when Apple got added to the Dow. There was some excitement about that. And then shortly after that, it split and all of that. So anyway, we have a basic Zoom chart here. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to add the momentum indicator that I just cleared away. So I clicked on the indicators button, and in the search bar here, I'm going to type in momentum. You could scroll through the list if you wanted to, but this is just a much quicker way to do that. We're going to go ahead and add that. And I want to add a few more studies here that we're going to talk about. I want to add an exponential moving average. So your simple moving average is just going to be moving average, but your exponential moving average is going to be moving average exponential. So we're going to go ahead and add that as well. And then we also want to add RSI. All right. Now, because of the black background, this is a little difficult to see. So one of the great things that you can do is you can actually change some of these settings to make them more visible. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. So we're going to start here at the top with the EMA line. We're going to click on the little gear cog. Anytime that you add an indicator to the chart, if it's going to be an indicator that overlays on the price like this, it's going to be in the upper right corner of the chart. And if it's one of these indicators on the bottom, like a histogram, like a MACD histogram or the RSI study, the settings are going to be specific to each area that it's in. So the first thing we're going to do is click on the settings cog here for the EMA. I'm going to make this line a little bit thicker. The blue's pretty easy to see, but I'm going to make the line a little bit thicker. And then I'm going to change it from the 9, which is the default, to the 13 EMA. 13 EMA is a common indicator used in momentum trading. So I'm going to use that here for our example. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make the momentum line here a little bit easier to see. We're going to leave the length the same, just the stock length, if you will, and make the line a little bit thicker. I'm going to do the same thing for RSI. I'm going to leave that the same. In terms of the length, I'm going to leave it at 14, and I'm going to leave the upper boundary of 70% and the lower boundary of 30% the same. Those are pretty standard, so that's what we're going to use for our example today. All right, go ahead and press OK. And the first thing we see here, we see some price action on a chart that's obviously moving up, and we see some pretty colors here. And so one of the things that we want to discuss here is how can you identify momentum? Just a few minutes ago, we identified Zoom because of the underlying catalyst. You can also use movers to see what stocks have been trading up or down, if that's what you're looking for, over the past whatever time frame it is that you're looking for. We can also probably use Screener for that, Jonathan. I think maybe we should go ahead and show the Screener after this. But for the sake of the example, let's go ahead and add some of these indicators, and let's make sense of what we're looking at here. So the first thing that you're gonna notice here, let's start with the EMA line. You can see that already this EMA line is pretty good because at one point the price, excuse me, let me mute my phone. I always forget to do that. I used to get in trouble in school, college, and high school all the time for having my phone on. So let me get rid of that. Sorry about that, Jonathan.
No worries.
In the past here, you can see that the stock price of Zoom was actually above the 13 EMA. And then when it comes back in here, it actually kind of straddles this line. It does go beneath it briefly, but not very much. And then even the next day crosses above it before closing below it again. And so you can see here that there's kind of a battle going on in this sideways trading. And if you look what that corresponds to in the other indicators that we have, it's kind of no man's land here on the momentum indicator, and we're definitely in no man's land here on the RSI indicator. So you can tell that this is definitely some sideways action. There might not be a trade here based on what we're looking at. But as you can see, as the price starts to go up, some of our other indicators react to it. And that was the key point that I was making before. This is reacting to the price action. So that leads me into one of the other things that I was going to say is that don't get discouraged if you can't pick the bottom and then sell the top. That can really be kind of a fool's game. And really what you're trying to do is capture some of the meat in the middle. If you happen to catch the bottom of the top, great. That's wonderful. But don't beat yourself up over that, because it turns out that is actually quite rare, especially if you're trading off of indicators which require the price as one of its inputs. So as you can see here, when this stock starts to trade up, we have a spike on the momentum meter. Now, what this means is that there could be a change in the momentum. So you'll see that the spike happens and then it kind of tails off. And the same thing happens with the price. Now, what's important about the momentum indicator is that as it starts to curl back up, it actually does not make a new high. So using Benzinga's chart tool, you can see here it's drawing these axes, and I can I'm pointing at my screen like you can see it, but basically you can see that this first peak where it spiked up was actually not broken by the second peak. That's important because normally what you want to see on this indicator is that once one of these peaks is broken, once a new high is put in, that might be a good time to buy. In this particular case, we test it, but we don't actually break it. And look what happens after it. You can see the price of the stock actually dips. In fact, it comes down to the 13 EMA that we've already discussed, breaks below it, and then trades sideways while it tries to get back to the 13 EMA. Now, eventually, it does get back there. It breaks, and it closes above it. That's a really good sign. And now this EMA that was resistance is now support, and the stock stays above it. So if we take a look at the momentum indicator, you can see that right here, this new spike broke those former previous highs. All right, so right where my cursor's at right now, 52,366 is the reading over on the right-hand pane. If I go back to these other peaks, they're not quite as high. It's 43, and then we got one that's 47. So we just put in a new high on the momentum meter. And lo and behold, that corresponds with this big green candle that also happens on volume. So going back to how we use this momentum meter, now that we've put in a new high, maybe this is a good opportunity to buy. So if you had bought it on this day, even if you had bought it at the very high of this particular candle, 169, look at the price today, 174. So already you're in a little bit of profit. What happens if you were able to grab this intraday yesterday at maybe 160 or 161? Now you're 13, 14 points above your entry. Depending on your trading plan, depending on what you're trying to get and what kind of gains you're trying to capture, the trade might already be over. And you can see that what we did here is we did this by being patient as an investor and waiting until one of these new highs on the momentum meter was put in. Now, it's important to realize that as everything in the stock market, nothing is 100%. So if you're going to take this trade, always have a trade plan ahead of time and know what your stop is. So in this particular example, you can do a number of things. If you wanted to make this a more long-term trade, you could make your stop closer to the moving average line. But if you wanted to make this an even quicker trade, you can go ahead and draw a horizontal line here. And we want to mark off the tops of these two candles. All right, let me draw another one of those there. Sorry about that. All right, so real quickly now, I've identified a range here that the stock has already defined. So in the past, the stock actually defined these ranges. It was tried to test this, couldn't break it, tried to test it again, couldn't break it, and finally we broke through. So using our knowledge of former resistance now becomes support, now this is what I'm looking at. So if I took this trade, let's say, for example, we took this trade at 165 yesterday, okay? And then today we have the stock gap up 10 points just about. In fact, earlier today it was even higher. I believe it was 176 earlier. Let's see, this wick all the way up to 181 at one point today. So there were plenty of time in the morning to take partial profits on your trade. Now, this has to do with your trading plan. If you want to take all of the profits, you can. But if you want to let this ride for maybe a week or 2 weeks and see if this trend continues, you can do that too. You can sell a portion of your position to lock in your gains and then decide when is this trade invalidated? When is this not going to happen? Well, I just drew two previous price levels. That was former resistance, which is now support. So if the stock trades back down to either one of these levels, that might be a very good stop. And remember, because you sold half of it in profit, you're still up on your particular trade. And what you're doing now is you're actually protecting your profits and you're protecting your capital by not giving all of that back should the stock choose to reverse. And the reason that I brought RSI up here too is because you can see what the RSI does. A lot of times you'll be watching TV or you'll be listening to an analyst and they'll say, oh, the stock's overbought or the stock is oversold. And what they're referring to is the actual RSI value. Overbought is considered greater than 70 and oversold is considered less than 30. Well, so in this particular case, you can see here that the RSI is still in no man's land. But let's take a look back to when it wasn't before. So you had right back here when we talked about this initial spike that we've used to mark off some of our price levels, you can see that RSI actually spiked through into the overbought category and then started to trade back down. Now the price tried to retest that, but the RSI slope was already pretty low, as was the momentum slope. And as a result, the stock actually sold off. Well, if you take a look a little bit further back, you can see back here in the beginning of February, you went ahead and broke above 70. And then it actually continued above that 70 line. And look what happened with the price. The price actually, you have this nice, powerful green candle. And then we have some rather low range moves. They're not dramatic moves. They're just kind of average, but the trend is still intact. So if we want to take a look at that, we can go ahead and draw this trend line here. All right. So this trend is actually still intact, and this can be a very easy trade to ride out. Even on some of the days where it's down, it's actually not down that much. You haven't violated your entry. You're not underwater on your trade, so you might want to actually hold this. Probably get stopped out on this trade on this big red candle that actually tested and broke below the 13 EMA, but again, that's up to your particular trading plan. So just because something enters higher than 70 RSI doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to sell off, but it can. And one of the things, and which we identified here on March 23rd, it actually did not keep those gains. And in fact, it even tried to regain those, but it failed and was unable to do so. So the whole point here is that you want to use as many of these tools as possible to try and give you as many data points as possible. And you always want to think, okay, what am I going to do if this trade works out? And what am I going to do if this trade doesn't work out? And a lot of the times you can actually use these indicators in conjunction with one another to try and figure out, what am I going to do given situation X? Because as we've discussed, nothing is 100%. So Zoom is actually a really good example here because it's got that underlying catalyst, and then it fairly easy to see what's going on using these different tools that we have in the chart. And this is actually one of the reasons why I really like Benzinga Pro, because already just in our example here, we've used two tools together to try and come up with a trade thesis, a trade hypothesis. And you can do this over and over and over again. In fact, you don't even have to take these trades. You can actually just watch them to see if they react.
That's so valuable, Ryan. Thank you so much for
sharing
no problem. All that. I was wondering if we wanted to take a look at the overview tab on the details tool, just because, this is wonderful what we're looking at, all that technical analysis with the indicators, and then just using the news to really confirm what's going on, right?
Absolutely.
You were talking again and again, what's that catalyst that's the underlying bedrock, so to speak, of this momentum play. So right here, this is what you would first see when you open up the details tool, and you have a quick overview chart without as many bells as whistles as the trading view chart, but at least you can take a look at the 1 day or the 5 day chart, see what's going on. And then underneath it, you have all the news on that company. So it's a great way, whether you're on the movers tool or the screener or the calendar tool, just to open up the details tool, take a look at what's going on, and then you can click into any of these news items, and you'll see that oftentimes there are also tags associated with those news items. So if you see the same catalyst coming up again and again and again, keep in mind to pay attention to those news categories, because you can actually use those as filters on your news feed to be alerted to those types of items, those catalysts in the future.
Jonathan, that's a great segue. I think we should cover the news feed next, but I also wanted to piggyback off something that you were just saying. So we started with the chart in our example, and as Jonathan mentioned, now we can actually review the news to see what is actually driving this or what is making this catalyst. But the other thing that you can do here is you can review other key data about this stock. So for example, in the key data section, I actually have access to this company's float right here. So right away, I can determine, in the case of Zoom, we knew what this was ahead of time. But if this is a stock that maybe you're not as familiar with, or you're unaware of what the share structure is of this particular stock, now you can actually see what its float is. You can see some other things on here, like its market cap, any key ratios, what sector it's in, what industry it's in, and then even at the bottom here, you get a little blurb about what the company does. So there's a bunch of other information on the same screen, on the same overview tab, that might aid you in your research. And then just to finish up here before we actually move over to the newsfeed tool, this can also be very helpful, in particular with momentum strategies, because sometimes one company having a important catalyst will actually drive some of its peers. And if you'll notice right here on the details tool, we have a peers tab. And if you click on it, it will tell you other stocks that are similar to this particular stock. So if you want to try and explore an entire sector or explore a particular setup, there might be other stocks that haven't put in their big move yet. And Pro makes it very easy for you to research that. In addition to that, you can also review some of the events for the particular stock by clicking on the calendar tab. You can review the financials if you want to do any fundamental analysis. And again, you can review the key data. This is a little bit more of an expanded key data tab. So there's a number of different things that you can actually do to research the particular stock that you're looking for, or to facilitate the trading plan that you're trying to execute. So, Jonathan, let's go ahead and move into the newsfeed, and let's show people how they can actually use the newsfeed. So I have another workspace over here. Let me go ahead and close some of these tools.
Awesome.
And I'm going to load you up here a fresh default newsfeed. So what's the next step here, Jonathan?
Yeah, so the newsfeed. I always say that the newsfeed is really the heart and soul of Benzinga Pro. It's what we're known for. All this actionable content in one spot. And the question is, how do we filter this down to make it applicable for your trading strategy or for what you're comfortable with? And there's a few quick ways you can do that. First of all, we're in earnings season now. So if you're looking for those earnings plays, you can use the categories filter to go straight to the earnings and guidance related news items. Ryan clicked on categories, and then he's going to click on the news category, and there are subcategories there. Earnings is towards the top, and then guidance as well. So you just check those boxes, and as soon as you check a box, it narrows all of that news down to only what you select. So all we have to do is click done here in the bottom right corner, and now we have all that earnings and guidance related information. Another thing we can do for earnings, you can click on sources, and that's where you can select between Benzinga signals, which are automated activity alerts, Benzinga wire, which are those curated newsfeed items, and then we also have press releases here. So many times companies will release their earnings as press releases, and that can be very helpful to have open during the earnings season. So just figured I'd mention that off the bat. So right here you have a great newsfeed for the earnings season. Sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
No, I was going to say, Jonathan, that's a really good point. And one of the things that I did there while you were discussing that is you can see that I actually colored some of these. Some of them were pre-colored, but I also colored them. And this can actually be very helpful in quickly identifying what it is that you're looking for. I like to color my entire press release source as brown because I associate that with paper, brown, obviously brown, trees, paper. And then for me, I'm just trying to give myself every possible advantage to increase the speed at which I'm processing information. And color coding is a very good way to do that. So I will often color code my entire press release source as brown. The result is when I go back to the newsfeed, I have all of these different news lines here. There's a ton of text, but I can actually discern what is what without even reading it because I've gone ahead and color coded it. And the same feature is available in the categories filter. So you'll notice that when I clicked on news, I had some other categories here highlighted as different colors because I want them to stand out in the newsfeed. So once you come up with something that works for you, and as it becomes more second nature, it'll just be very easy for you to identify things in the newsfeed. And as Jonathan mentioned, as you're reading through there, you can also click on them and review what other types of tags that has that you might want to add or remove from your categories filter. So Jonathan, sorry for cutting in there.
No, that's great. So here's a great way to find those earnings announcements. Another common question I get all the time is, how do I just get that major market moving news on the overall market? And what I always say is just filter for the SPY. Look for the S&P 500 ETF because that's what our news desk uses to find that major market moving news. And you'll see here as Ryan selects that, you've got a bunch of the coronavirus headlines, the Fed actions, whether it's a senator or our president, all of those types of things will be right here on the SPY, as well as international relations. So that's another good way to filter it. You could also add ETFs for commodities, maybe USO for oil or GLD for gold. In fact, we can show you in a little bit. I actually just use those to build an indices watch list, like indices and commodities. So I just have those so I could just check a watch list filter and include all of them at one time.
And so what you're talking about here is actually using this watch list button to then further filter down your news. Now I have a whole bunch of watch lists here. Let's see if I have one for indexes.
Ryan, you don't like watch lists at all, do you?
No, No.
You never use it.
No, I don't use it. So I actually have one here for ETFs. So this is similar to what Jonathan was talking about, but it's not focused on the commodities. What I have here, I have some foreign ETFs, and then also the SPY and also the emerging markets. So what I can do is I can actually select this watch list filter, click done, and you'll see now what's happened is it's filtered the news feed on all of those tickers, not just the SPY ticker that we set up in the previous example. You will notice that most of it is SPY because there's a lot of news going on right now that has to do with that. But there are other tickers in here too, like RSX, which wasn't in the first example that we showed. So Jonathan, great tip there on filtering the newsfeed by a watch list, and it works for more than just ETFs too. So if you're not interested in the ETF, like I have my main stocks that I'm always watching and trading, I can actually just filter my newsfeed by those stocks. And again, the exact same thing happens here. It's cutting out the noise, if you will. It's only showing me the news that's important to me. So it's much easier to go through all of that.
Great points, Ryan. And then right next to the watch list filters, you have sectors. So pretty simple. If you only trade certain sectors, then get rid of all the other news. So you could just click on technology or healthcare, and then just narrow all the news down to those sectors.
And so again, just to recap here, whenever you add sources, you're putting more news into your news feed. Whenever you add filters, you're actually removing news because you're telling the program to only show you news about specific categories, sectors, or watch lists that are important to you. So sometimes that's not necessarily clear up front, but understanding that will go a long way in helping you actually filter your newsfeed down.
Cool. I just want to share a few more of those categories. So we use the
Absolutely.
categories to build this earnings workspace, right? But some of those highlighted categories, we found time and time again, they just show up in your movers tool. If you're looking for the news items that cause those very significant moves, what do you see here? Underneath news, you have asset sales, influx of cash, contracts, increase in expected revenue. FDA, I personally love biotech. I know Ryan's more into technology stocks, but FDA, you'll see huge moves based off of the research and development process. And then towards the bottom there, you have offerings, usually more of a negative catalyst, diluting those shares, and of course, rumors. So if we add all those, and then before you click done, there's also on the left-hand column above news, you have M&A for mergers and acquisitions. That causes big moves. Hot, some of the biggest stories of the day. And then underneath general, you have biotech and healthcare. Both of these, again, related to the biotech sector, especially with the pandemic, but it's just some people just love trading biotech in general. So this is my short list. I'm sure you may have some others, Ryan.
Yeah, but this is a really good point because not all traders are the same. And as you pointed out, biotech is a very, very popular section, or excuse me, a very popular sector. And because of that, by filtering your news by that, you might be able to stay on top of that sector and capture some of that volatility. One more thing that I would like to add in here, I always like to add this last category that we have called Wimps. And what this is this stands for why is it moving? And why is it moving is actually very, very helpful because as news comes out, when the news desk can determine what piece of news is driving a stock price in either direction, they'll actually tell you. So if you go back to our example when we were showing Zoom on the chart, we had a why is it moving banner at the top that said this is moving because, and I actually can't remember exactly what it was, but the reason was there. Let's go ahead and find it real quick. I don't like doing that. So what I did here is I actually have Wimps as one of my filters, and I just filtered the filtered news feed by Zoom, and here we go. So here is that Wimp. Zoom video communication shares are trading higher after it was announced that the company will be added to the NASDAQ 100 beginning on April 30th. Exactly. So, so this is actually a very helpful filter because this will actually tell you why a stock is moving. So here's another example here. So it looks like GE shares are trading lower and we're not seeing any company specific news. So this might be something where you might want to play a mean reversion trade on that. again, if that fits into your trading plan. But we will try as hard as we can, and our news desk are very experienced and do this every single day. We will try to find the reason for you. And if we can't, we've got given you a whole bunch of other tools for you to then go through and find that reason yourself. So again,
great quick question here that came in about the Wimps. So someone didn't think that the Wimps were really working. They said, it said it would go up, but the price eventually went down. You have to realize that these are observations of what has already happened. So based off of other variables, the momentum, the past price action, just because something already went up doesn't mean it will necessarily continue to rise. So don't take this as a buy or sell signal, but you have to bring all those other variables into your decision making process. So it's telling you why it is moving, but then you have to take a look at everything else to see what you think will happen moving forward.
And that's a really good point, Jonathan. That's exactly why you want to fit it into your trading plan, because let's say that there is a piece of news that drives a stock higher, and the people that own that stock are like, wow, boy, this is great, and they start selling their shares. They start taking some of their profit. That could actually drive the price lower temporarily. And as Jonathan mentioned, the stock market, it's always going to go up and down. Nothing is going to move in a straight line, or at least not very often. So with that being said, make sure that if you're placing a trade, that it fits into your trading plan. If you see a piece of news that's like, for example, on Zoom was added to the NASDAQ 100. Well, that could be something very bullish for today, but the sentiment on that might change on Monday. So, and even throughout the course of the day today, it's quite possible that investors that are already holding the stock actually take profit on that stock, which could drive the stock lower. So it's not necessarily, again, it's not set in stone, but it's just another data point to help you find something to trade and to add to whatever is in your existing trading plan. As you can probably see, I'm very, very big on trading plans. When I first started, I tried to trade by the seat of my pants, and it didn't work. It was very difficult to control my emotions. Once I had a plan and I had markers that I could either stick to or monitor my own progress, it made it much, much easier to deal with some of the ups and downs that we were just talking about.
Absolutely. Really quick, I just wanted to point out the alerts that you can set up for the categories through that bell symbol in the upper right corner. So all the way up there, you see it says alerts, and if you click on that, you'll see that some of the categories are available either for sound alerts for each new news item or the checkbox for those email alerts. So let's say you want to know anytime there's a merger or acquisition related item, you just scroll down to M&A, activate that sound alert or activate that email alert. So that's just another great way that you can keep up with categories. Or you can turn on desktop notifications on the main filter toolbar. And that way, even if you're on a different screen, maybe you're a broker or something like that, if a new news item hits, it's going to give you a pop-up on your desktop.
Absolutely, and that's a really good point. One more thing to add there: the desktop notifications on Windows appear in the bottom right, and on Mac appear in the upper right. So be advised on where to actually look for those. So I saw another question in here about using Benzinga signals to trade based on block trades. So Jonathan, do you mind if we shift gears here a little bit and answer Daniel's question?
Yeah, that sounds great. Let's take a look at signals.
Let's do it. So I actually have, I'm actually going to go ahead and click on signals. I'm going to add this tool to the particular workspace. I'm going to keep the news feed up because I kind of want to see what's going on with the news flow for the categories that we just set. So Daniel was asking about block trades. So let's go ahead and turn block trades on. You'll notice that I turned the price spike off and then turned block trade on. You don't have to do that. You can actually add multiple signals to one window, but as you can see, it kind of clogs it up. So if you're looking for something specific, there's no reason why you can't just select one of those particular signals. Throughout the course of the day, I actually use several of them. It just really depends on what I'm doing. So to answer Daniel's question here about block trades, now we're taking a look at the block trades that have been flagged in Benzinga Pro for today. And you can see that there are a bunch here. And you can see that basically what this is saying is normally it will read block trade and then the ticker, and then it'll tell you how many shares were purchased at what price. And in some cases, it'll tell you where that took place. So on this, let's just use this first one as an example here. I'm actually going to close the newsfeed now so that we can bring it over to the left-hand side of the screen here. This trade right here is saying that someone bought 1 million shares at $3.04. So for some very quick math, we learned that a trader or an institution actually just paid over $3 million for this particular trade. Block trades can actually be very useful because they can tell you where some of the big players are going to be, or what some of the big players are doing, excuse me. And in this particular case, we actually have an added piece of data. So we know that they bought 1 million shares, which is quite a bit. We know based on the price that they spent over $3 million, which is quite a bit. But we also now are being told here that this was above the ask. What this means is that someone decided that, you know what, the price is not as important as me owning this stock. So when you're thinking about an actual stock transaction, remember, this is a zero-sum market. So for there to be a buy, there also has to be a sale, and vice versa. So if you think about that in reference to the bid-ask, you have a whole bunch of offers sitting on the bid that aren't getting filled because no one's selling into them. And then you have a whole bunch of offers sitting on the ask that aren't getting hit because no one's buying into them. And then all of a sudden, we have this big player here with all of these resources saying, you know what, I'm not necessarily concerned about the price as much as I'm concerned about having my order filled. So go get me my 1 million shares. Well, in this particular case, in order to fill this order of 1 million shares, they actually had to go above the ask, which means that the ask was 303. They actually had to pay 304. Now, I know that sounds like just 1 penny. What's the big deal? But we're talking about 1 million shares here. So that actually is quite a bit of money. What was more important to this particular trader was that they got their position filled. Now they're long. So let's actually click on this. Remember, whenever you click on a ticker, no matter what tool you're in, it will go ahead and try to load that into the details tool. If you don't have a details tool, it will open one up for you in that same workspace, providing there's enough space. So right here, we actually clicked on that. Oh, look at that. We've got a why is it moving at the top. Let's see what it says. Shares of several energy companies are trading higher as oil prices continue to rebound amid increased expectations the U.S. will cut production. So right here, this is saying that oil companies are continuing to rebound. Now we have someone stepping in and buying 1 million shares today. You can do the math there yourself, but to me, this sounds like this is pretty good. Let's take a look at the chart here real quick. All right, so you can see actually what happened here is that this stock, let me turn on our session break so that it's easier to distinguish. All right, so this stock was lower today, and in the pre-market it spiked, and then it sold back down. You can see this at one point earlier today was as high as 320s, and as it sold back down, someone stepped in and said, you know what, this is low enough for me. I want to go ahead and own 1 million shares here. So with just the couple of clicks, we've discovered several things. We've discovered that there is a huge purchase here, and you can actually see that being represented by the volume candles right here, which are clearly orders of magnitude bigger than the previous volume candles. We've also determined that something's going on with the oil market that's causing this energy stock to move, and it actually might be affecting other energy stocks. So right here, with this one block trade, we haven't even gone through the rest of this list, which we don't need to. With this one block trade, we know something about this particular stock. We have a bullish indication on this particular stock. But now we also know that this actually might be applied to other companies that have to do with oil because of the underlying catalyst. So with just a couple of clicks, we're able to figure out a whole bunch of information here, and now we can actually take that to the next step. So here's another thing, thinking about this block trade example. You can see here we've got another banner here that says Q1 earnings are confirmed 6 days from now through April 30th. Well, so you could think about this in two ways. Number one, this might be your when we're thinking about a trading plan, this might be your window. Maybe you don't want to hold through earnings. Maybe you want to see if the stock runs up into earnings and then get out before that binary event that could cause the stock to go higher or lower. Or you could say maybe this person that was buying 1 million shares was trying to position themselves ahead of earnings where they think that this particular stock might surprise to the upside. So again, this all has to do with using as many data points as you can to try and determine what actually fits into your trading plan and how you're going to take advantage of that. So Daniel, that's a great question. I hope that I answered your question. I know I took a little bit longer there, but we discovered several things in our discovery process.
Absolutely. And, just since we have the signals tool open, Ryan, I just figured we could showcase a few more of those signals that are
Absolutely.
available. You've got the option activity there as well to basically show you block orders of options just instead of stocks. So that's another indispensable tool for so many people looking to follow the smart money, so to speak.
And Jonathan, I just really quickly want to add in there. This is actually something that I watch all of the time, in addition to block trades, because like you had just mentioned, I want to see where some of that smart money is going. I want to see whoever is able to afford 1,000 contracts here of Delta Airlines. Like, I want to know about this. This looks like a put sweep near the bid. So it looks like they're trying to actually get out of this particular stock. So, I mean, there's a number of different things that you can discern by using the signals tool. Really, one thing about the options activity is actually an add-on. This required extra data that we had to purchase in order to create this signal. So there's actually an add-on price to the options activity. I believe it's $14.99 per month retail. But this is an incredibly helpful indicator, or excuse me, an incredibly helpful signal that could be another data point in your trading plan. And very much like the Newsfeed, you can actually filter this by several different options here, like your watch list, or even a particular stock, or even the stock's float. And you can also set up some notifications here. So desktop notifications, sound, and synthesized voice, which is the computer trying to read it to you. Now, one of the things that you'll notice here is that there's no email option here. And I don't know if you get this question, Jonathan, but I sometimes get this question, why is there you have an email for the news category, but you don't have an email for the signal? The signals tool, these are streaming in here in real time. So in order to take advantage of these, you really kind of need to be at your computer. If someone sent you this block trade at 11:38, and you checked your email, and by the time you got back to the computer, 15 minutes has passed, that piece of data, that data point might not be valuable to you. So while we are always trying to expand our offering, in particular our alerts and notifications, in this particular case, this is an example of one. There is no email one because this is probably more beneficial for you to actually be in front of the computer. Now, did you want to go into some of the other signals here, Jonathan, like the price spike, for example?
Yeah, just very briefly. I mean, it's a great way to keep a pulse on either the market as a whole or maybe a watch list of stocks. So
Absolutely.
Price spikes are going to tell you anytime a stock spikes more than 1% within 1 minute. So that can be, a great way just to stay up to date on your stocks or a particular section of the market. Maybe you're following stocks from $1 to $20 within the technology sector. You could narrow it down with your filters and then know it whenever they spike. You could do the same thing with halts and resumes, opening gaps, highs, or lows. Some of those technically significant events, or, with opening gap, one quick note on that is that that's a one-time signal right at the open. So if you're looking for those pre-market gappers or intraday gaps, that's where I would say use the movers tool to get those real-time updates on what's gapping since the previous day's close. But some people just like to see that signal right at the open so they can see, what's the dollar change, percent change, and a multiplier times the average true range.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Jonathan. And then one more thing that I wanted to add here. This is actually something that people are experiencing. In the highs and lows, these are basically the same. One is for highs, one is for lows. The session high, this basically will alert you anytime a stock is making a new session high. But as you can imagine, there's tons of stocks out there, so this signal would be quite chatty. The day high series is a more filtered down version of that particular signal. So it's not going to use up as much system resources and may actually make your platform perform better depending on your computer specifications. So again, these different signals here, there's a wide range and they're designed to actually be one more data point in your trading plan, whatever that may be. me go ahead and turn the price, the block trade and the price spike back on. And so take a look at our block trade candidate here. Take a look at SWNs. When the ask was 303, they bought above the ask at 304, and just a couple minutes later we're already up 3 cents. So obviously that big volume influx has caused a reaction in the stock. So Daniel, just to circle back there, you can always watch how these stocks react, and I would actually advise people do that. Monitor these things first. You don't necessarily have to jump right out at the beginning and start taking every trade that you can.
Yeah, just some other questions here. Getting to Brad's question about knowing about IPOs. There's a couple ways you can tackle that. There is a category for IPOs on the Newsfeed, and then we also have the IPO calendar on the calendar tool. So under categories here, you would just go to news, and then IPOs are one of the subcategories. So if you check that, there you have all of the IPO news. And then on the calendar tool, I guess just to touch base on that, it's essentially a table format of much of the same data that's available within the Newsfeed tool. So if you look at the IPO calendar, here's a bunch of data on IPOs within a specific time range. And now keep in mind here, there's actually 13 different calendars within the calendar tool. So you can choose from analyst ratings, conference calls, earnings, economics. So all of that is available within the calendar, and there's some amazing filters that you can use on here as well.
And Jonathan, just one more thing to add on there, since we discussed the option signal and how that was actually an added cost. That also gets you access to the unusual options activity calendar, which can be very useful for actually doing research, in particular historical research, because remember, the signals tool is going to be streaming the most recent events. Well, the calendar tool here, it's laid out the same way, it's laid out a different way, but it effectively has the same data in it. And this will allow you to use some of these filters. Like if you only want, let me move us out of the way here. Like for example, if you only wanted to see puts or calls, you could use that filter here in order to see whatever whatever you're looking for. Excuse me. So the calendar tool, another great tool, very, very helpful, especially when it comes to research.
Awesome. And then Ben had a question here about the higher number of sweeps being a sign that it was harder to fill the order, possibly making the other side stronger, or is that information not worth reading between the lines over?
So I'll take this one if you don't mind. That sweep number is actually quite important. In fact, this is another really good segue here. This is really flowing well. If you ever forget what some of these things mean, I know when you look at that option signal, there's a lot of different data points in there. If you ever forget what they mean, we actually have something to help you that's available to you. So we have a very robust help site that has a whole bunch of different articles and videos and tutorials to help you learn how to use Pro. And so if I click on the help button in the upper right corner, it takes me right to the help site. I'm going to go ahead and type in option here. When I type in option, you'll see that the fourth one down here is how do I understand option alerts? And if you click on that, you will get a help document and a chart that breaks down each section of the option alert that you were talking about. So let's focus on the sweeps that you had asked about. Sweep means it needed to be routed in more than one way, and the number means how many routes. So another way of thinking about that is that in order to fill these large, unusual orders, they actually needed to break up that one order into multiple smaller orders and then send it across a bunch of different routes. They need to route it through different exchanges. They always need to try to find the best price. Generally speaking, the higher that number is, the more, I don't necessarily want to say bullish, because as you can see, if it was a puts at the ask sweep, that's actually a bearish indication. But you can use that number next to the sweep to judge the magnitude of that particular option alert. For me personally, I'm really concerned, or I shouldn't say concerned, that's the wrong word. I pay attention to anything that's 40 or higher on that sweep number. When I see a number that's higher than 40, that piques my attention. That's definitely something that I want to watch. Maybe not buy it, but I definitely want to watch that and see how that plays out. Likewise, if I actually already own that stock and I see that high number, that's definitely something to watch, because that actually might affect the price in one way or another. So Ben, that's a great question. I highly advise you to consult this sheet and then watch that over the course of time. We had another question here about API access, yes, we do have API access, but that's actually a separate department from the Pro department. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and reach out to Jonathan or I, and we will connect you with the licensing team. It's possible, but we don't have the details on that at this time.
Yeah, you can always go to benzinga.com/APIs. That's APIS. Or you could email us at onboarding@benzinga.com, or go straight to the licensing team at licensing@benzinga.com. So they'll get you all the documentation as well as pricing information for those APIs.
Absolutely. And so I got another question here from Francisco. Is it possible to link Benzinga to external application like your trading software so that clicking on a ticker opens it in the application? This is a great question, and you're actually not the first person to ask that. The answer is no, that's not possible, but that is something that we are absolutely looking into. In fact, the first step of that is we're actually going to be releasing the ability to trade directly from the Benzinga platform. This is not available yet because it's a brand new feature that Jonathan and I are kind of sneak peeking for you right here. So let me go ahead and load up a details tool here. And you'll see that you've got, because for the internal testing purposes, I've got buy and sell buttons here. And one of the things that this does is this is going to allow you to link a compatible broker to your platform, so that if you're, for example, if you're looking at that chart, like in one of our earlier examples, and you see something happen, you're like, oh my gosh, well, you can go ahead and actually buy right from the Benzinga Pro platform. You don't actually have to go back over. The next step here is going to be able to link this to more of your trading platforms. So while we are looking into doing that, we don't have any type of timeline on that yet, and I certainly don't want to tell you that it's available now when it isn't. So that is something to look out for in the future. I see another question. I see another question here real quick, Jonathan. How do you edit your watch list? Great question. This is actually not readily obvious to newer users. Here I went ahead and pulled up my watch list. Let me go ahead and sort this real quick. So let's say I want to remove one of these stocks, all right? Or I want to edit it. So first of all, if you want to edit the name, you just click on the pencil, and it'll allow you to change the name of the actual watch list. If you want to add a stock, you can go ahead and just type the ticker in here. Let's go ahead and add Zoom to this watch list. All right. If you want to remove a stock, like let's say I want to remove Zoom from this, all you have to do is right click on the actual ticker, and you could select remove from watch list, as well as other options here like column sizing and exporting this watch list to a CSV. It's important to note that you don't have to remove things one at a time either. So if I wanted to take out all of these stocks, I can actually just select them like you would in any spreadsheet editor. Just click and drag, or click on it, hold your shift key, and then click on another stock, and you can select the range. And then if you right click, it will actually remove the selection. So you can edit your watch list one at a time or multiple tickers at a time. Great question.
Yeah, in terms of adding tickers to your watch list as well, you could always copy and paste from a CSV into the search bar. So let's say you have 100 tickers that you want to add. You copy them all at once from a CSV and then paste them right into that search bar. And just as we're nearing the top of the hour here, just wanted to say, we covered today how to use Benzinga Pro for some momentum trading strategies, but this is usable for any trading strategy. We just covered gap and go trading 2 days ago, and we really don't want you to miss out on all these amazing tools over the next year. So we're offering this code only to you people who are attending today. Right now, you can use the code volatile35. That's all lowercase, volatile35. That's good through midnight for $912 per year. That's going to save you almost $500 off of our annual subscription. Again, that's all lowercase, volatile35, and you can go to pro.benzinga.com/checkout. So I'll throw that in the chat right here. In fact, Ryan already did. So and that comes with a 2-week money back guarantee. So even if you're not at the end of your trial, you'll still have 2 weeks where if you're not completely satisfied, we'll give you 100% of your money back right away. So, and of course, reach out to us. Hopefully this was helpful to you today. I know I'm grateful to work with Ryan with his trading experience, and And if you have technical questions about the platform as well, reach out to us at onboarding@benzinga.com or VIP accounts at benzinga.com, as well as that little blue bubble down there in the bottom right corner. You could always access our help team, our news desk, or our sales team. So if you guys have other questions, we'd be happy to answer those. But again, it's volatile 35 for the 35% off the
And I
annuals.
did see a question from Brad earlier that I actually skipped over. Brad, I'm really sorry about that. I would be happy to answer your question. Can the news feed be used to signal when an IPO starts? I've been waiting several days for IPOC. It was supposed to start on the 22nd. Brad, that is a great question. And I'll be honest, no, the news feed can't do that. But let me explain why. The whole IPO process, it's kind of like the Wild West. Sometimes like a specific stock is supposed to go on one day, and you show up, and they show this a lot on CNBC. They show a whole bunch of the traders gathered around one of the posts. The open outcry process is going on, and they're figuring out the order book on where to open the stock. There is no tool that's going to tell you exactly when that opens. In fact, even if the people on the floor say that this stock is going to open at 10 o'clock on the dot, that stock might not actually open till 10:05 or 10:06. So in my experience, the best thing to do if you're expecting an IPO is to kind of watch it. And you'll get updates on that. So for example, if an IPO is delayed, or if there's something going on with the company, or they release a statement or something like that, sure, you might get that update. But in terms of when the IPO actually opens, no, the newsfeed's not going to be able to do that. In fact, I'm not sure of any feature that's able to do that. That's a very, very difficult thing to do because it is so random. And it is so, even if it's scheduled for a particular day, there's no indication that it's going to open at the time that they say it is. So again, kind of like the Wild West there. So Jonathan, is there anything else that you want to cover here? I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We're 1 minute over here, so I didn't see any new questions.
Yeah,
Do you have a discount code? Here's one. Jonathan, is there a discount code for the quarterly subscription?
I think, that's already discounted 14% at the 377 for the quarter. If you're still in your trial, then you could use the code SAVE20, and that'll give you 20% off of the quarterly subscription. So that's all caps, SAVE20. So I'll just throw that in there as well.
All right. Thank you very much, Jonathan. And while you're doing that, I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. I love these sessions. One of the big things here at Benzinga is we're trying to create a community of traders that are helping one another. So I'm glad that you guys all joined us today. I look forward to working with you in the future. I know Jonathan does too. And so just thank you very much for joining us today. So for Jonathan, I'm Ryan, and remember, Zingers, until next time, happy trading.